This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com.
Alpha Natural Resources. Consistent with its Running Right process, Alpha is an energy company committed to being a leader in mine safety and an environmental steward. We fuel progress around the world. More information at alphanr.com.
The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Information at vachamber.com.
It's amazing what my students with special needs can accomplish. Their pride is priceless. That's why I teach.
Brought to you by the Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome back to Secretary Brian Moran, Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security. Appreciate your being on. When you were on before, we talked about you had another deputy who was working on Homeland Security and other issues, and we're glad to have him with us. But before we come to Adam Thiel, Dario Marquez?
Yes, correct.
Saying it correctly?
You are.
Welcome very much. A distinguished career in Secret Service, with 3 presidents, and then founding your own company that you've headed up for over 30 years.
Correct.
And testifying before Senate committees, and being on this Secure Commonwealth panel now for the 3rd governor.
That's correct.
So we appreciate your being on.
Thank you.
And Adam Thiel, a friend for many years in fire service in the Commonwealth and in 3 other states, and one who headed up the Department of Fire Programs at the time when Governor Warner started the Secure Commonwealth panel. So we appreciate the 3 of you being on. We'll tell our viewers that we're having a conversation on the day that the panel will be meeting, soon after the time that we have our conversation. They'll be seeing it about a week later, but we may be referring to some of the things that you're dealing with this afternoon in the panel. But Mr. Secretary, you start us off, and then, as we did when your other 2 deputies were here, and now Deputy Thiel and Mr. Marquez, then let's just go back and forth, telling our viewers what this Secure Commonwealth panel is doing to help us all be more secure.
Sure. Well, thank you, David, for having us on.
Delighted to have you.
These are important topics. This was created, the Secure Commonwealth panel has sort of morphed into what we're dealing with today. It's called the Secure Commonwealth panel. It had some other names previously. Essentially, it was created after September 11th, 2001. About the same time the Department of Homeland Security was created on the federal level. So we have a lot of interaction with our federal partners, primarily the Department of Homeland Security, which now has FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Association, has Border Patrol, has Secret Service, has TSA. So it has a number of entities, federal entities that that we deal with to ensure the Commonwealth security. And so over the last several years, it has taken on any number of responsibilities and issues. So the current issues concerning the Commonwealth are those threats that we face every day. This is hurricane season, so something as important as our hurricane preparedness, primarily in the Hampton Roads area, but all of the Commonwealth. But then also new threats like ISIS. How do we counter foreign terrorism in the form of ISIS, but then also domestic terrorism? Individuals who are being nurtured here at home over the social media networks to join ISIS and carry out acts of domestic terrorism. So it really runs the gamut in terms of the threats that face the Commonwealth, and we continue to use the Secure Commonwealth panel to advise the governor on these threats and how prepared is the Commonwealth. And so we're thrilled that someone like Dario, who has that wealth of background, that joins the committee and is a very active member of the panel. And of course, Deputy Thiel, who brings a wealth of experience himself, Department of Fire programs, and then he himself was a fire chief in the city of Alexandria for 6.5 years, a large jurisdiction. But also, he can tell you he was one of the first responders at the Pentagon at 9/11. So both of these gentlemen bring a wealth of experience in that area, and we're blessed to have them serve on the Secure Commonwealth panel.
The Secretary really has set it up, and passing the baton on to the two of you. Who would like to go next? In fact, let me go to you, Adam, and then we'll come to our long-term member serving on here to give us some more information, and then to Dario.
Sure. I think one of the things with the merger of Homeland Security from the former Office of Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security into the new Secretariat of Public Safety and Homeland Security,
yes,
with Secretary Moran, has really helped us streamline and line up the policy and the administration functions. Of course, it's a big job for the Secretary. It's 11 agencies, around 35,000 full-time employees, about a $3 billion budget, everything from ABC stores to Department of Corrections, State Police, my portfolio, which is emergency management, fire programs, the National Guard, Homeland Security, and also resilience. The governor not too long ago named Secretary Moran as a Chief Resilience Officer for the Commonwealth. And in that role, he really has equities and interests, and his job is to be that kind of first point of contact for folks who are interested in resilience-related issues, whether they're transportation, what we've traditionally thought of as disaster and emergency management, sea level rise, the impacts of climate change, extreme weather events. So it's a lot, it's great work, and we really do rely on our stakeholders. One of the hallmarks of this administration, Government Golf, and finding common ground, and certainly we take the direction from the Secretary and executing that every day, is ensuring that we have all the right stakeholders around the table. And having the Secure Commonwealth panel, and we have members from the General Assembly from both parties. We have a lot of different subject matter experts, 33 members in total. We're really able to benefit from that collective expertise and wisdom, and helping guide our choices day to day as we allocate what remain scarce resources to this broad range of missions. So we're happy to have that input, and we really, every day we're out meeting with our federal partners, state partners, local partners. The Secretary is often out on the road, and the rest of us are out on the road, really, because that's where the work takes place. That's where the boots on the ground are, is out in our localities, and also meeting with our federal partners who are there as well.
So you've served under 3 governors on this panel. What are some of the issues that you and your colleagues on the panel are wrestling with right now? Start us into that list. I've looked at what you covered last meeting. I've seen your agenda for the meeting that will occur later today. You've got many critical issues that you're working on. So take one of them and get us.
Well, if I may, let me give you just kind of a historical perspective.
Yes,
when I came on, as you had mentioned, the executive order was signed in 2000. I think it was May of 2004. I came on 2007 under the Kane administration. And our big focus there was really creating the strategic plan. And that was a massive undertaking of strategic plan, if you can think about it, for all hazards for the whole Commonwealth. A lot of focus on that plan, which kind of was to set the direction of where the Secure Commonwealth panel was going to go. That was accomplished, the writing of the plan. Next, we came to the McDonald administration, and there we went through the transition of going from Veterans Affairs, the Secure Commonwealth plan, to Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security. A lot of time spent, and then what was going to happen when we went through that transition. And now we have the current administration. And we are now really, I think, focused on really not just a strategic plan, but a framework of how do we get this done. It's a coordinating body that really coordinates with other agencies, and how does this panel work effectively to get that accomplished with all the stakeholders, both in government, out of government, and in the federal government. And so this is now starting to gel. And I believe what's happening now under this administration, under this secretary, is that the panel now is beginning to implement in a finite and very defined way what it was perceived to have been doing when it was first established. And so now I think we have this framework in place, which is an overarching document that tells us how the panel will function, but not only that, how it can work with its partners in a very effective way. And I think that's exciting. I think we're on the right track here, and we're excited to take on this challenge. So we're working very effectively, and we're working definitively to get that accomplished. Big challenge, but a lot of good resources, good leadership, and I think, to be quite candid with you, a good plan and a good way for the future, and it's good for the citizens of the Commonwealth.
You know, a complaint that's sometimes made about government at all levels, sometimes warranted, many times unwarranted, is that they conduct studies, and then the studies go somewhere up on the shelf, and that's it. In contrast, I think what you've laid out, the three of you have laid out, that this is a living, breathing, active, both plan and something that you're working to implement. This is not some study that's filed away somewhere.
Absolutely not. If there was any criticism of the past, was that we were focused on a strategy, and that was really an academic study of what should be done. This is a realistic plan of how it's going to be done, how it's going to be implemented. And so I'm not faulting. We needed to go through that.
I understand.
But this has been an evolution. And now we've evolved to the part where we said, we've done that, we've looked at it, now how are we going to get it done? And so I'm really excited about the fact, because I believe through the Secretary and through the Governor, that we are actually now moving to get things accomplished, which I think we need. And the threats are there. They're real, whether they be natural, technology, or man-made. And so we have a huge challenge, but I really feel that we're really all engaged now in rather than what is it going to be, onto how's it going to get done.
And the work that you do collectively and through the entire panel, much of it gets done on the local level, and really working with people in the locality. That's part of what your charge is.
Absolutely.
So what would be one of the issues in your meeting coming up now that you'd want to tell our viewers about, that you're working on, one of the important ones, Adam?
Well, we have a number of sub-panels that are currently working on different mission areas. One is the Secure Commonwealth Plan sub-panel that Mr. Marquez talked about, and really kind of reframing that plan so it's aligned with where we need to go in the future and what we're doing today. We have a Health and Human Resources sub-panel that I think is one of the original sub-panels that is still working on threats today. Ebola virus disease. I mean, we used to be worried about anthrax. I vividly remember living that as a local responder. Now we have Ebola. Anthrax is back in the news, and that sub-panel is still very busy on that work. We also have a sub-panel around law enforcement technology, and that sub-panel has been looking at body-worn cameras. Again, a lot of stakeholder representation from localities, from other interest groups, a very broad and diverse set of people who come to that sub-panel. I don't know if the Secretary wants to mention anything about the law enforcement technology sub-panel, but that's been a big one for us.
Yeah, what about the law enforcement one? Any further comments on that one?
Well, sure. We're very excited about the body-worn camera issue that we'll be talking about this afternoon. We're very interested in expanding the use of body-worn cameras. We've seen nationally the benefits. We received a presentation from the state of Arizona recently. The 70% decline in complaints, citizen complaints, once body-worn cameras were issued to police officers and used. So the challenge, of course, is what the details. When do you turn the camera on? When do you turn it off? How long do you retain the information? Those are the details that this panel has been struggling with. And I think I say struggling only because they're not as easy as some have perceived them to be. But we're going to come up with some really strong policies and help our local law enforcement agencies. Ultimately, it's their decision, our sheriffs, our police chiefs, campus law enforcement, to purchase and use these. But we'd like to have some statewide policies to assist them. We are supportive of their use and do believe it will not only benefit law enforcement, but benefit the public as well to ensure a safer Commonwealth. So those are issues we're going to tackle. The use of unmanned vehicles as well, otherwise known as drones. They have tremendous public safety uses, but again, we need to look at the privacy issues that are associated with their use. So any number of issues to deal with. Again, we want to be relevant and current with the threats that face the Commonwealth, and that's why we're being flexible in terms of the issues that we deal with and the plan in which we engage them.
I noticed that rail safety was on your agenda for the last meeting. It's back on the agenda for this meeting. What's the concerns that you're dealing with on?
Well, we had a train derailment in Lynchburg last April 30th, and we took a long, comprehensive review. This is Bakken crude oil that's coming from North Dakota, and it ends up in Yorktown, Virginia, which is a wonderful commercial enterprise, jobs and economic growth because of that. And also for CSX Carrier, which is carrying that crude oil. But it presents a public safety risk. It's combustible. And so we will have, the governor created a group immediately after that train derailment to review the safety measures as it crosses the Commonwealth. And so we're going to have some recommendations, and I'll hand it over to Adam to talk about specifically, but I think there are good recommendations coming from all the stakeholders that are involved in the issue.
We're fortunate in Virginia that we have a strong foundation of regional hazardous materials response. That's a collective effort between local governments, largely fire departments, supported by all their law enforcement partners and the Department of Emergency Management. You know, really, if you have an incident like this, one of these crude oil trains, it's a major incident, and it will quickly outstrip the firefighting capability of any one locality. So there's a lot of work still to be done around the response and recovery, but there also are some things we're looking at in terms of preventing these incidents. Much of the regulation is at the federal level, so we're certainly watching that keenly, and we're engaged with our congressional delegation. We're still waiting for the National Transportation Safety Board report on the Lynchburg derailment. At the same time, there are some things we're looking at that came from this Safety and Security Task Force. One in particular to highlight is trespassing. You know, I see folks all the time walking around in the railroad tracks or trying to go around crossing gates. Well, you can imagine that to stop a mile-long freight train, it's not an easy proposition. And believe it or not, a trespassing incident like that, for the rail crew to have to put the train into, it's literally called putting it into emergency, could cause a derailment in what should otherwise be a routine event. So we're looking at things like that that folks may not think about. People driving ATVs on the rail bed of a railroad. You can actually, believe it or not, you can degrade the quality of that rail bed and cause a derailment. So that's one thing that folks may not think about that we've also been focusing on, in addition to the response and recovery issues that we're already pretty capable around, but there's always more work to do, more training, more resources and equipment to bring to bear.
With your long career that you had before going into your own business that you created and the Secret Service, what are some of the issues that, I'm sure you've been varied over the 3 administrations that you've been serving on, but what are some of the issues that you're working on with other panel members right now?
Well, again, the biggest topic that we've been working on has been taking the strategic plan and making it a strategic framework. But the issues are all the same, and the Secretary mentioned those. We're always concerned about natural disasters. That is always very big. And I have to say, for one of the things that transcends all these 3 administrations is that they've done a pretty good job, a very good job, on dealing with and focusing on the natural disasters that Virginians could be susceptible to. We're dealing also with the issue of terrorism. And I'm proud to say that Virginia has a great fusion center that works very well, which engages the public with law enforcement. If you see something, say something. And so that's a big step in the right direction. The other thing I want to mention, as the Secretary and Secretary Thiel mentioned, that one of the things that your viewers should be proud of is that this body coordinates effectively with the private sector. The vast majority of critical infrastructure is in private sector hands. Right. And what you're hearing here is there was an incident, so how do we coordinate government? But also the private sector has to be involved. And so this is a vehicle for dialogue. And we have to work together. And this is what works very well is when we bring those stakeholders together. And the Secure Commonwealth, by its very nature, was intended to do that. And it does that effectively well. And it's a plus for the Commonwealth and for those that the Secure Commonwealth is trying to protect.
That's an excellent point. Cybersecurity now is foremost. I mean, Secretary Thiel and I just attended a national conference of Homeland Security advisors, and we had folks from as far away as Alaska, California, and then our neighbors, North Carolina and Maryland, West Virginia. Cybersecurity really has risen to the #1 concern, and it requires private sector cooperation in the form of information sharing. If they have experienced an attack, how does that information get shared with the federal resources such as the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and then of course state resources as well. So that is really a topical issue. I mean, we've seen any number of attacks on any number of retailers, websites, and even universities. And so that is one, as a nation, we are trying to get our arms around in terms of preventing, but then responding as well.
The next meeting of your panel, not to rush you because you have a meeting this afternoon, but the next meeting I think is scheduled for November 19th. And we'd remind our viewers, those meetings are open. And they may be coming as a part of a stakeholder group, or they may be coming because they really would like to see at that time what are your legislative recommendations that you're going to be making, what are some of the reports that you're doing. And so we always try to encourage people to take advantage of meetings that occur when the legislature is not in session as well as when they are. And your experience with all those years in the legislature, the public is here at that time, en masse at times, but then not here that much during the other months when there are extremely important meetings going on.
Well, agreed, and they should be here during the
Yes.
legislative session. Their
Yes.
voices are extremely
Yes.
important. It's an absolutely essential ingredient to the legislative making. But I will differ in that that the citizens are here. They're represented by individuals such as Dario. We have task
Good point.
forces.
Good point.
We have a task force on body cameras. We have a Secure Commonwealth panel. We have a task force on parole reform. We have task forces on any number of issues, just in my secretariat, in addition to all the other secretaries as well. And we bring in as many citizen stakeholders as possible, both from whether it be law enforcement, and also the NAACP, other citizen organization groups that are stakeholders, are true stakeholders in what we do in the area of public safety, and we engage them. And so they are represented, and that's why we're so pleased to have someone like Dario, who's a successful businessman that has his background in security as well. And he's not the only one. We have other members on the Secure Commonwealth panel. So we rely on them a great deal in terms of engaging in the process, and we're all better because of it.
You commented that all the administrations have done a good job on the potential natural disasters. In our closing minute or so, what messages would the three of you want to give to people around the Commonwealth with regards to this hurricane season that has started? We were talking before we was taping that one potential one has developed, whether it will get to Virginia.
We'll know by the time this is aired
By the time
whether or not it was. But we're very vigilant, and I would encourage your viewers to go to Ready Virginia app. We are nationally recognized for our app, which you can put on your Android or iPhone. VDIM, Virginia Department of Emergency Management Personnel, put together a wonderful app. Also, See Something, Say Something campaign in terms of terrorism. That is an essential ingredient as well. We encourage individual citizens to take responsibility to see something, say something. So there's any number of public campaigns around these issues. Go to the website, Facebook, would welcome their involvement. I'll pass it over to my friends.
Anything that the two of you would add?
It's almost as simple as whether it's hurricane season or winter storms, have a kit, make a plan, and stay informed. There are many ways to do that, but everybody has a stake in this. It really is it's a whole of community effort, not just a government or private sector effort. We need individual citizens to be involved and take responsibility for themselves, their families, and their neighbors.
I would say that while the process is still evolving and may not be perfect, I think all of your viewers should take pride in the fact that Virginia is a model, that we are a model state in what we've accomplished here, what we've done. And so while it's not perfect and it's still work in progress and we still have a lot to do, we've come a long way. And so we're we as Virginia should be very proud of what Governor Warner started and what Governor McAuliffe is moving forward on.
Thank you all three very much. That's a great point to end on, and thank you for being on This Week in Richmond. I look forward to having conversations with you again in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com.
Alpha Natural Resources, a leader in mine safety and an environmental steward.
The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community.
The Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.